But more generally, it's events like this where, people are facing, extraordinary circumstances, in which, they have to make decisions about matters of life and death, and they, participate in events that involve stakes to that high. You begin to find out what people are really like. And it's that, the experience that people go through that really kind of separates heroes and villains and people of good character from people of bad character, and shows human beings at their best and at their worst that I'm interested in. Doesn't have to be a catastrophe. It's just, these are extreme events. And so it produces a kind of, fascinating character study in a way. And the other thing that both of those events have in common is that they give you a sort of snapshot of society from the top to the bottom, like a kind of slice through everything from, President Reagan to the children of members of the Challenger crew and everybody in between. So it presents you with an interesting snapshot, a historical snapshot of society at the time, which is another reason that I'm attracted to these stories that have a kind of large cast of characters.
That's fat. Yeah, that makes sense. And I do want to have us talk about the political and social and sort of obviously this is height of Cold War and Reagan and all that stuff that went into both the lead up and the aftermath. But it's interesting you said the heroes and the villains. Did you come away with a sense that there were people who were villains? I mean, I know obviously there were people who we would definitely second guess their decision making. But for you, were there villains?
Not really. I mean, I think that's kind of lazy shorthand, because part of the reason I wanted to write this book in the first place was because, the way the story can be told and has been told in the past, you can emerge from the end of it with the idea that there are these sort of black-hatted, mustache-twirling villains who knowingly sent 7 astronauts to their deaths. These middle-ranking NASA officials who kind of, blithely wave forward the launch despite knowing that it will almost certainly end in failure of one sort or another. And of course, that's not how life works. In fact, that there are no real heroes and villains in this story. It's populated by people in various different shades of gray. And I wanted to kind of show that these kinds of decisions that result in catastrophes like this, happen for the most, human of reasons. And people just one way, if one person in the launch decision chain had made a decision this way or that way, it might never have happened. Yeah. And it was not, these kind of, silent movie style villains who were responsible for things going wrong, but people who thought they were doing the right thing and thought they knew better. And in the end, it turned out that they were just wrong.
Yeah. Well, it was also interesting. I mean, you certainly bring in all of the different pressures that were on all the various characters, whether it's political pressure, financial pressure. Early on, you talked about Thiokol, who did they just do the boosters, the rocket boosters?
Yeah, they were the contractor that designed and manufactured
just the booster, which is where the issue went wrong. But they had been cruising along with this government contract, this NASA contract, as the sole builder of these rockets and of these boosters. And then there was a little bit of like, oh, we might actually open this up to bidding from other companies. And there was a lot of panic at Thiokol. You have things like that where you have a company whose engineers, and we'll talk about this too, were some of the ones ringing alarm bells, but who ultimately signed off on it. And there are these other pressures, like we might lose a huge contract that would make this company fold if we're the ones who say no, don't launch, and the government loses and NASA loses its faith in us and all that stuff. There's so many bigger pressures other than just, okay, will this O-ring hold, that goes into this process, that I feel like your book really explored all of the facets and sort of, it makes it really feel like, yeah, this is a really impossible decision in so many ways. And then in other ways you go, yeah, but it was freezing and you never tested it. Go, stop. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there are protagonists in the story who are arrogant and overbearing, and other ones who are sort of just weak-willed. But it's those are the things those are the characteristics in people that really result in this kind of failure, not somebody who kind of gets up in the morning and looks at themselves in the mirror in the bathroom and decides they're going to do something evil today.
Sure. It was also interesting as you trace through the various programs, Apollo and Mercury, and we get to the STS programs, the space shuttle programs, and it is such a short time in the scope of history that we went from the notion of being in space was a pipe dream to where we're launching regularly. And it's like it was losing steam in terms of public interest. People, these launches were going on and people didn't know about them. And I think we get lost in that where we go, it's kind of an old hat at this point. And then that there are people that things is so new and there are always things that can go wrong. And it's easy to just assume that it should just go flawlessly because they went so fast and advanced so fast.
But also, NASA implicitly allowed the public to think that this was the space shuttle program was something that had successfully made spaceflight a routine process. And, they never actually said to anybody that it was just going to be like flying on a scheduled airplane flight from JFK to LAX. But that was the impression that the public gained. And NASA never did anything to disabuse them of that. Even though the astronauts who flew on the shuttle and the engineers involved in the program all knew that this was an experimental vehicle and it was exceedingly dangerous, by bringing forward the idea of the space flight participant program with the result of that they then had the teacher in space program that emerged from that. They allowed people to think that this was just, a quotidian thing, that you could fly into space in your shirt sleeves and there was never going to be any danger of any accident.
Yeah. And did you get this? Was the teacher in space program, did you get the sense it was just, okay, what's our next marketing thing so that we can get people interested in this again? Was it as simple as that, or did it go further?
That would be a very cynical view, but I'm not sure it's one that I entirely disagree with. I mean, a lot of the impetus for doing the spaceflight participant program, the teacher in space program, was for exactly that reason, that they had succeeded all too well in convincing the public that spaceflight was now routine. And the space shuttle had begun launching, during 1985, they almost launched once a month, which was it was getting close